Hey everyone, Clay here. Just wanted to let you know my graphic novel Bloody Hell is now for sale in stores and on Amazon. So if you'd like to help support the show, get yourself a copy of that. Thanks so much. Here's the show. Welcome to the Rotten Horror Picture Show. Hello. Welcome back to the Rotten Horror Picture Show, the horror movie podcast, where we talk about films off the Rotten Tomatoes 200 best horror movies of all time list. My name is Clay. With me, as always, is Amanda. How are you doing, Amanda?
I'm just Andy. How are you?
I'm good. I want everybody to know that if you shoot me, you can only make me dead. No. Damn it, I screwed it up. You can't kill me. You can only make me dead.
Yes.
Which sounds very profound, but I'm not really sure what it means.
And I want everyone to know that you can have the fish sticks or the beef stroganoff, but they both come out of a package.
And there's no ice cream in this movie.
No.
We should have put that thing under things you'll find is no ice cream.
Damn it. Damn it.
We are talking today. This is our wild card movie. This is not on our main list. This is my choice. Every 5 movies we do a wild card, and this is my choice. It's a movie called Dead and Buried, which I am very excited to talk about because I feel like I'm going to give this the same introduction that I gave Starry Eyes to a certain extent.
Interesting.
But before we do that, had you seen this before? You hadn't, right?
No, I knew nothing about this one.
Yeah, this one was one that I think I had seen around for years and years. I think I had seen the videotape.
It's got a great, like, the cover image
It's
or
creepy
poster or
as
whatever.
hell.
It's really great.
It doesn't tell you a damn thing about the movie.
No, but that's why it is so great, because it's like, what the fuck is happening in that movie?
Yeah, it's like a barren desert with like a face coming out of the ground.
Yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to be like the rocky beach that's in
No
the
idea.
opening of the movie.
No idea.
Yeah.
I avoided it, like not like actively avoided it, but it was never one that I rented because honestly, the poster didn't really it was just weird. It didn't really grab me.
Yeah.
And I actually finally learned about this movie while there's Joe Dante, director of Gremlins and The Howling and whatnot, has this show that he did called Trailers from Hell, where other filmmakers will talk about the influential horror movies and they will basically narrate over the trailer.
Yeah.
And I saw Guillermo del Toro talk about Dead and Buried.
I actually ended up watching this
Did
yesterday.
you?
Yeah,
it's pretty good. Maybe instead of the actual trailer, I'll just play the audio from that. But so that was the first time I'd ever seen visuals from this movie.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what to expect. He sold it pretty well.
Yeah, he seemed very enthused about it.
Yeah, and then it ended up on, I think it was either on Shudder or possibly Amazon Prime like years ago. And I sat down and I watched it, and I loved it. It was, and it's one of those, the reason I mentioned Starry Eyes is because I'm always looking for movies to fill the gaps of my horror movie likes.
Yeah.
And I am always excited when I find one that I haven't seen from an era that I'm fairly familiar with that I've never really heard anybody talk about.
Yeah.
That turns out to be, for me at least, really good. Like I find it rare to watch a movie, a horror movie now where I come away and go, that was great. I really, really like that.
Yeah, and it's so fun when it's kind of a surprise and it feels almost like a secret that you discovered.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
like it's like no one has been talking about this. This is not the next new thing that's having a moment. It's just something that you kind of found and are like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, and I'm a little surprised that it doesn't get much more play because it's I mean, I guess it's not really that notable as far as plot or whatever, but it's Stan Winston's first movie or one of his first movies. Stan Winston, the special effects guy who created the Terminator and Predator and the Alien Queen.
Didn't he do Jurassic Park too?
No, I don't think he
No.
was. He didn't work on Jurassic Park. I can't remember if he did a movie similar to that, but
Yeah.
he's one of the big names of movie special effects.
Yeah.
And brings his A game in this one, I think. But yeah, it's just it's an interesting. It's creepy. It's off the beaten path. It's kind of like subject matter that's not something you'll find every day.
Yeah.
And well, we'll get into it as we talk about the act. I don't want to ruin everything. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll play you the what the hell? We'll play you the trailer from Hell version, and we will talk about Dead and Buried when we come back.
Hi, I am Guillermo del Toro, and you're in Trailers from Hell. I'm about to introduce Dead and Buried, 1981, Gary Sherman. And this is one of the 3 movies, count them 3, where I utilized a fake mustache to be able to buy the tickets because of the rating. The fake mustache was horrible. It was made out of a piece of a fake male hair chest. I don't know why they sold it in the wig store, but they cut me a little swab, and I put it on top of my. It was like a fake Errol Flynn mustache. It matched my hair color somewhat, but it had a thick latex layer on the bottom. I don't think I fooled anyone, but perhaps the ticket seller thought the fat boy was deranged enough to attack her because he had a piece of plastic glue with some curly hair over his lip. So whatever. I got the tickets for this, Holocaust 2000, and the Attack of the Eyeless Death, Attack of the Blind Terror. And, this movie really was a landmark for me because the mustache worked, but the movie also worked.
This is the road to Potter's Bluff.
I remember exactly where I was and what cinema I was when I saw this movie, and I think the trailer encapsulates exactly what I love about it, which is presenting the facade of a normal town, a middle America, sort of Norman Rockwell-esque, and then gradually but brutally tearing it away. I mean, Gary Sherman had done a fantastic movie called Raw Meat or Deathline, which marked my childhood, if you can imagine what kind of childhood I had. And I was very, very interested in seeing this movie because of him. I was probably the only guy that showed up not interested in seeing it because it was done by the same creator of Alien. I came out for Gary Sherman. What I think Gary does is he has an incredibly perverse sense of humor, and he knows how to do very graphic stuff, very brutal stuff, with a very strange sort of artistic sense. He had a sense for finding the beautiful in the horrible, and the trailer shows this, which is a pivotal scene in the movie, a very famous scene that is sort of a riff on Polanski's The Tenant in a very brutal fashion. And he was aided in the making of this movie by Stan Winston, who does some terrific brutal effects for it. And I think the trailer shows you just enough to entice you, but I urge you in Spanish and in English to go see this movie and see the trailer, of course, again and again. Vean la película.
Of it. Dead and buried. When you die in Potter's Bluff, expect the unexpected.
All right, Dead and Buried from 1981. I think 1981 might be kind of an underrated year for horror movies.
I feel like a lot of those cusp kind of years are. It's not quite fully out of the 70s, not quite fully in the 80s.
Yeah, I think there's more in there to dig into that we'll get to eventually, because I really want to... when we did Friday the 13th last year, I was kind of thinking we might do some sort of like tangential movies related to that. Like,
okay.
That was one of the choices for this year for Patreon, was like slasher boom years, basically the early 80s.
Yeah.
And one of the ones I really want to talk about is April Fool's Day. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
No.
No, maybe we'll shuffle the deck a little bit.
For April.
But it's another one from like 1981 that is kind of flies under the radar, and is like that one. I feel like you'll either love it or you'll hate it depending on what happens at the end of it. But anyway,
okay.
This is not on our list, but it does have a 76% Rotten Tomatoes score, which is pretty good. It is sorry, I jumped over a bunch of stuff. I was excited to talk about it.
You were raring to go on this one.
It's directed by Gary Sherman, written by the story by Jeff Miller and Alex Stern. The screenplay is credited to Ronald Shusett and Dan O'Bannon, who are the two that wrote Alien.
Yes.
However, I learned today from one Joe Bob Briggs that Dan O'Bannon actually did not write this. He was hired to give notes on it because he was more of a name than the other guy was.
Got it.
So they hired him. He did notes. They used none of the notes, but they still put his name on the movie.
Oh, wow. Okay, so because I had been poking around a little bit online about this movie today. And definitely saw it was like, oh, Dan O'Bannon's name is attached, but he disavows the whole thing. And I was like, wow, it feels like there's a story there.
Yeah, it's not like a quality thing or anything. It's just that
he's just like, this isn't my movie.
They basically paid him $10,000 to use his name to sell the movie.
Wow.
So.
Marketing.
And it stars James Farentino, Melody Anderson, Grandpa Joe from Willy Wonka, Lisa Blunt, who really reminded me of when she was in the nurse getup. Have you seen Grindhouse? The Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, part of it.
Marley Shelton plays a nurse in that movie, and it looked very similar. I always wondered if they were pulling from this. Lisa Blunt and a young, fresh-faced future Freddy Krueger.
Yes.
Robert Englund.
Before all the burning and the scars.
Yes. He's got some scars by the end of this, though.
True.
Yeah, different kind, though.
Emotional scars.
Amanda, what happens in Dead and Buried?
A sheriff and his wife realize the town coroner has been creating an army of rural zombies.
What the fuck?
I was so excited to read that summary to you because I knew you were going to get real mad.
The Sixth Sense is a story about a cop who dies at the beginning, who finds out later that he himself is also dead.
A little boy who can see him.
Yikes.
Yep.
Well, hope everybody watched the movie.
I assume if people are listening to this, they either watched the movie or they do not care about spoilers.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's really frustrating. I mean, it's a 30-something-year-old movie that no one has seen. So,
I mean,
well, no one cares about it. Is my point.
I just want to say I don't think I've ever seen you so angry.
That's just annoying.
Maybe angry is not the right word. Just like I feel like you've given up a little bit.
Well,
over there.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm being unfair. Like, what is the other option?
The other option.
The other option, as far as like synopsis goes. I mean, I guess it would be like cop investigates murders in
small
Maine? Coastal town.
Is it supposed to be Maine?
It is supposed to. I thought it was Rhode Island, but it is supposed to be Maine. The doctor came from Rhode Island, I guess.
All right. Well, in case you want a better. Oh no, this one also spoils it. It's a better summary, but it also spoils it.
Okay.
A suspense horror film set in a small coastal town where, after a series of gory murders committed by mobs of townspeople against visiting tourists, the corpses begin to come back to life.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
you're
more okay
I'm
with,
okay with that one.
Rather than a sheriff and his wife discover the coroner is creating rural zombies.
So the first one is more of like that's interesting. It's more of a selling point, I guess, because the second one feels a little bit more generic.
Yeah.
So take it or leave it, I suppose.
Well,
anyway.
Well, I can tell you some other things that will spoil parts of this movie for you. Mm-hmm. Because some things you'll find in this movie include light bulb based breaking and entering. The mother in this was so determined that there was because there was a light on in this house. Yes.
It was okay for her and her family to break into it, rummage through it, and then that whole argument really had like a
it's not about this.
Right.
Ron.
Yeah, it was like another the end of a month of arguing just summed up.
Yeah, I would say maybe how old's that kid? 6, 7?
Probably.
I'd say 8 to 9 years of arguing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You'll also find casual cape and hat ensembles. Mm-hmm.
Very, very fashionable. You wore one here tonight.
I did. I intentionally matched my outfit to Janet. A magic book.
I always give it up for the magic book. It's
Book
my
of magic?
favorite.
Magic book.
Yep, it's my favorite plot device. I also love it when they open the magic book and someone has conveniently put a bookmark in and also circled the section.
I love that he finds the ritual knife right next to it.
Oh yeah, I mean you don't want to lose them.
Yeah,
keep them in one place.
Yeah. That's her occult dealings drawer.
Yeah.
An acid neti pot.
Yeah, that probably my least favorite special effect.
Great concept, questionable execution.
Yeah, I guess apparently the director told the guys who were doing that one, I don't know if Stan Winston did that one, that he wanted to be able to do the whole thing in a single shot. And so it was designed that way, but it was...
Yeah.
They didn't have the technology to make that look great.
They weren't there yet.
And then they ended up cutting away anyway, so...
Yeah, bummer. And not enough parenting to really be questionable?
No, I mentioned previously, I guess it was questionable parenting to break into that house looking for a phone.
But I mean, if you're lost, because they're lost, they think somebody just ran out in front of the car. It's dark and foggy. The kid has hit his head and is crying. I can understand being like, my child might have a head injury. That's pretty dangerous. I saw a light on in this house. Let's go see. Like,
just kick that door in.
Well, that's the weird thing is like, if I ever tried to get into a house and I just opened the door and it just swung open, I'd be like, well, not here.
Yeah.
Let's find another house.
That whole thing just, it smelled like modern upper middle class parenting to me, where it's like they get the cops called on them and she's like, no, I saw a light on.
Right.
So I thought it was fine. I mean, the light was on in the house, so we went in.
My child needed ice.
Yes.
For his head.
And there was a light on.
What do you people expect me to do?
Anyway.
Yeah.
This movie takes place in a coastal New England harbor town.
Yes.
Which is one of my favorite settings for a horror movie.
Same.
I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's like Lovecraft hangover for me, but
yeah,
I don't know if it's because it's relatable being from the Northeast and having spent many years among such towns.
Yep.
But I really like that as a setting.
I do too, and I forgive me if I've told this story on this podcast before. I think if I have, it's probably been a while, but I have like a vague memory of when I was a kid, we used to do like all of our vacations were just in the car. Like we didn't fly anywhere. There were too many children to buy plane tickets for them. Put them in the van. Let's go. And one year we went up to Maine, and we were pretty far up north, and we were driving and definitely like only sort of knew where we were. And we had to stop somewhere for like gas and the bathroom and what have you, because 3 children in the back of a car. And my dad brought me inside the like little convenience store gas station thing, like, and we walked in and there were a bunch of like creepy dudes sitting at like a lunch counter, like an old school lunch counter, and they all turned and stared at us.
Nice.
And they were terrifying, and it was pretty much like, oh, we should not be here. Sorry. And we just kind of turned around and left. Because it was like, nope, we will use the next bathroom. You will pee on the side of the road, but like, we are getting out of here.
He should have been like, I'm here to catch the big catfish.
Yeah.
Where do I buy the right bait?
There you go. Probably would have helped.
They would have known him as one of their own. No, I think it has something to do with, like, in the United States, the certain types of creepy town locations which are removed from... not kind of removed from the city and just more isolated. You kind of have like Appalachia, where you get into your like what's that movie? Deliverance type stuff. You've got the desert.
Yep.
And then you've kind of got like I don't really know if there's a Pacific Northwest version that's that much different than the Appalachia one, but the coastal New England fishing town is one that is...
It's such a type. Like, it's such a strong and obvious kind of trope right away where you're just like, yeah, okay, they have those accents and they dress in that way, and there's always like a dingy noise happening in the background.
Right. And in this one, I think one of the things that they really lean into is the visuals.
Yeah.
Because this movie, well, before we get into all that stuff.
Yeah.
What did you think of the movie?
I enjoyed it. There were parts of it I really liked. Like there were parts of it I was like, this is really cool. There were parts of it I thought were really boring. I kind of feel like I should like it more, but I don't know, something about it. I think the main character kind of felt too bland for me. Like I needed something a little bit more from him, and I think I needed a little bit of a stronger plot. I think it was like 20 or 30 minutes into this movie, maybe even a little more, and I said to you, like, I'm so glad this movie has grown a plot.
Yeah.
Like, it does that thing, too, where there's a lot of shuttling back and forth between the same 6 or 7 locations over and over again in, like, a rough rotation.
Yeah.
Which I'm fine with some of that, but it does, as we've talked about before, get a little tiring. But the highs in this movie are pretty high.
Yeah. This movie for me, I think, this movie's not about the plot really in any. Well, it's weird because like it's not about the plot for the most part with me with this movie, because I find the atmosphere and the subject matter so interesting and kind of unnerving.
Yeah.
Like I find this movie to be very uncomfortable and grotesque in a lot of places in a fairly unique way when it comes to horror movies, and the subject matter they're dealing with, especially from this coroner character, I find very interesting.
Yeah.
Like I have some sort of innate. One of the things that always freaks me out is like death and or returning from the dead. And I don't mean just like the generic like zombie way, like the literal climbing out of the grave way. You
mean like when I die, please make sure I have one of those Victorian coffins with the bell attached in case I'm not really dead so somebody can come get me.
Yeah, like I maintain to this day that the scariest zombie movie I've ever seen is Michael Jackson's Thriller. Just because of that one section where they all come up out of the cemetery. Yeah. Because I think that has always affected me more, because you are really understanding that these are dead bodies coming back to life. And also that when you're in a cemetery, there's dead bodies under your feet.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
Yeah. And so like getting into this movie when you've got this coroner character who, like, the first real scene with him, he gives this really interesting speech about the work that he does and the concept of death and how what he does is an art. It's a really fascinating kind of subject matter and take on stuff. And then when you follow that into the scene later on where you see like that full reconstruction of the woman's face. Yeah. This movie just really creeps me out in a way that is fairly unique. And the rest of the plot, honestly, not really that interesting. And we'll get into that a bit more. But like, I also really like the ending. Yeah. I think the ending is great. Yes. But yeah, I won't deny that the capital P plot in this movie is pretty boring.
Yeah, I think part of what disappointed me so much is that the premise is so great. Mm-hmm. Like the basic premise of the movie right off the bat, like you have this out-of-towner who thinks he's flirting with and then thinks he is going to have sex with this very beautiful woman on the beach, and then is attacked in broad daylight in the middle, just outside, by a bunch of people, just people. Mm-hmm. Nobody looks particularly, there are no monsters. There's no, horrible rotting zombies coming after him. They're just people, and they attack him, and they intend to kill him. They don't succeed at first, but they attack him in this really brutal and gruesome and intense way. Yeah. And then after his body is kind of set up as, oh, it must have been a car crash, and we get into the cop plot, the main character, Dan, he goes to the diner and like half the people from the mob are just in the diner. They're just people who live there.
Yeah.
And it's such a creepy, like right away, you're like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
Because these seem like very normal people and they're all in on it and you don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
I argue by the end of the movie, you still don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
Well, I mean, because it seems like Dobbs is commanding them a little bit.
Still, I'm not totally sure why any of this is happening.
I don't fully get why it needs to be on film, but it's just, it's so promising. And then there's so much of Dan just kind of wandering around giving people a confused face. Like heavy brows, unhappy face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't like that. And everybody keeps going, ask your wife. And it's like, I don't know. I wish they had played with the sort of the idea that like, everyone knows and that some of the people in this town are murdering tourists, visitors, whatever.
Yeah.
And some of them are not. But I don't think this movie does a good enough job of like playing with that and sort of having moments of like knowing that he's with somebody who's really dangerous and him not realizing it. It's just like the movie plays all the scenes the same when he's just like going around the town. And I wish there had been something a little more ominous, maybe something a little more in their behavior that could tip you off.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that I've never, excuse me, that has always confused me is like, I wonder if this is sort of like a narrative cone problem. My, trademark, Glenn McCormick, the narrative cone of vision.
God,
because
I really want to, I wish I was talented and I could make like a t-shirt that just had
I'm piecing all these things together.
The word narrative, but in a cone shape.
Yeah. I'm piecing all of these things I come up with that probably other people have explained better than me. I'm just going to write a book one day that'll be probably very short. But like I found myself wondering if there's two, like if you inherently have a problem with the way that you've set this story up, because you've got this idea that, like you said, there's townspeople who are killing people for unknown reasons, but you never get a sense whether or not everybody is in on it.
Yeah, like I know some people are not. There's a couple like minor scenes that are very sort of throwaway that again I wish they had kind of emphasized a little more, like the guy who runs the hotel.
Right.
He comes back to the sheriff and says, I saw that man who died.
Yeah.
Like I saw him pumping gas at the gas station. I know it's him.
Yeah.
So
like,
that's
true. Good point. Yeah.
Obviously he's not in on it. And obviously the doctor is at first not in on it because he hasn't had his acid neti pot yet. But then he is. And you don't, I don't know. I don't know if I want there to be more of a change when this happens to you, or just something that, I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm asking for, but I do feel like it's not maybe made explicit enough. And like, I know his wife's behavior, Janet's behavior is supposed to be kind of a tip off that things are
teaching voodoo to the school. That would be.
Are you not supposed
honestly,
to do that?
If I was a teacher, that would be a flex that I would do. Where they're like, if it was I was working at a school district, and they were like, you need to start teaching religion in school again. I'm like, no problem, buddy.
The Church of Satan is here for you.
Yes.
I do want to say that scene when he finds the witchcraft and voodooism book in the drawer. Man, I feel like that was ripped right out of my own life.
Yeah.
Except instead of Greg being mad that it's in the house at all, he's just like, really, another one?
Yep.
We're running out of space.
Yeah, but like, I wonder if, I feel like, unfortunately, as good and as fun as I think the ending is, I think it does bring up a lot of questions when you kind of like look back on it. And as I was watching through Joe Bob's coverage of it, and he does say like the minute you start thinking about this plot, it just opens up a billion plot holes.
Yeah.
And it's true, because like the main question that I come away with is why they never really tell you why the coroner's doing any of this stuff, except for the fact that he says, like, at one point Dan says, "Why are you doing this?"
Yeah.
And the coroner says, "Well, once I wrote it down. Where the hell is it?"
It's just like, because it's fun.
After people die, they don't get sick. They don't age. They're so beautiful, I can't stand to bury them. Okay, sure. But I don't understand why now they are actively killing other people.
So
is
that
that
he
something
can-
he's having them do on purpose?
Yeah, so
Just so he can do his artwork, I guess.
He loves his work so much.
And then, like, the other thing that my other question is, if Dan is also a zombie and doesn't know it, why would you make him not know it?
So that's, I think, the central problem with the movie is that I don't, like, the ending is great and it's really fun. But if we're going to start looking at it and actually, like, trying to think about it logically.
We probably shouldn't. But.
We probably shouldn't, but what else are we going to talk about for the next, like, 40 minutes?
Right.
It kind of, it throws in too many questions of, like, okay, so these people are killing others because they are zombies brought back to life by Dobbs.
Mm-hmm.
He is supposedly controlling them.
My favorite part of this movie, and this is like straight out of, you don't need some things you need to explain, some things you don't.
Yeah.
Is when Dobbs is like, some might call it black magic, some might call it a medical breakthrough. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, no, I'm all for that. I actually don't give a shit about how he's bringing them back.
Yeah.
We've got a magic book, a
Right,
magic
yeah,
knife,
doesn't matter.
and some hearts wrapped up in sweaters in
Yeah.
empty coffins.
Doesn't any more explanation would just make you start rolling your eyes and
Exactly.
really start thinking about stuff.
Exactly. So that part's fine, but it's then like, so the zombies have different levels of autonomy or memories or personality, because he
can clearly like program them.
right, but they're still, when people are walking around in town, they're not acting any different. Like they're still like responding naturally to conversation.
Right.
They're still going about their daily lives. So they have to have some level of independent intelligence. He can't, like, I guess, unless he's like, you'll be your normal self until it's nighttime and then you'll go kill a stranger.
Yeah.
But he talks on and on about how Janet is his masterpiece.
Right.
The rest of them are like sketches or whatever, but she is a painting.
I don't know. That beach girl was pretty good painting.
When she's in her nurse's outfit, sure. But Janet kind of seems to be like the first one who sort of mentally falls apart.
Yeah, well, that's brought on very suddenly by her getting shot 4 times at the end.
Yes.
And so I find it like that part doesn't bother me.
But Dan not knowing.
Yeah, Dan not knowing is just a weird choice, because I'm not really sure, like, unless that's further part of his plan to be able to bring people back who, because I
don't even realize that they've died. But
Yeah.
I guess I would have liked something to tip us off then about it.
Yeah.
Where even if it was like Betty, the receptionist at the police office being like, Sheriff, you're acting really weird lately. Like, I haven't seen you in 3 days. And him being like, wait, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's just it's such a strange. It's on the last drive-in, Darcy, the mail girl, described this as
That's such a derogatory title for her.
She embraces it though. She's great.
Yeah.
She called it an Italian horror movie made by Americans, and I 100% agree with that take.
I like that, because
it does have that same feeling of it makes more sense than most Italian horror movies, but even so, there's a loose kind of plot stringing things along.
I feel like when we did, oh God, is it Deep Red? Is that what that movie is called?
Yeah.
I feel like when we did that one, we kind of had that conversation where we were like, is it just like poor plotting and all atmosphere, and we're more okay with it because it's a foreign film?
Right.
Like it can get away with sort of like it lets us attribute something to like, oh, lost in translation. We are just not getting the full context because it's from a different culture, it's from a different time. And yeah, this movie kind of has the same vibe, except it is made by Americans.
It also, like, there's a lot of heavy ADR. Like, you can tell that it's not on set recorded dialogue, which also makes it feel kind of like a foreign movie.
Yeah, I did wonder when we were first watching it through. I knew it was an American movie, but I was like, maybe some of these actors weren't.
As far as I know, it was
all the main ones seem like,
But yeah, it has this. That's why I kind of like I struggle as to whether or not any of the plot stuff really matters, because I think the rest of it is so strong. Like I don't really know why they're taking pictures of people like at the moment of death and stuff, and why everybody's got cameras. It's scary as hell.
Yeah,
it's really creepy and really inventive.
It's how Instagram started.
Yeah, exactly. And even that end sequence when he goes to Cobb's place and he's got like 5 or 6 movie projectors just showing all of this film.
Yeah.
It's really creepy and really cool.
Yeah.
I don't really know why he's doing that, but it works.
I guess to preserve, to be able to show.
I think
this is
honestly,
how they started. This is how bad it got, and then this is how beautiful I made them look again.
I have a feeling that the camera and film bit is working backwards from, okay, the cop's gonna be a zombie. How do we show that he's a zombie? Oh, maybe he sees a piece of film of the moment that he's killed.
Yeah.
And so they work that in to make it not feel like someone just happened to be there.
Maybe I don't know about that though, because the cameras and the equipment are so integral to like the movie from the very beginning. Like I rewatched it, or at least most of it today. And the beginning of this movie starts like a still photograph and then starts moving.
Yeah.
And so it's clearly like a big preoccupation for the people who made it of this idea of like capturing things on film in some way.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe we're trying to go back into the sort of superstition of like cameras and film are bad because they capture a piece of your soul.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, it's it's funny because it's like it's one of those movies where I almost kind of think it might even be better if it made less sense, because like
that's an interesting
plot,
point.
So this movie is
where it can become almost like a visual just collage.
Like go even further down the Italian horror route, where like I don't know how many Lucio Fulci movies you've ever seen.
Not many, unfortunately.
Well, we'll have to change that at some point. They don't make a lick of sense for the most part, but they are so visually interesting and auditory. Like the music's always great, that it is really just sort of like an experience. And the minute you start going like, wait a minute, if that book can bring back the soul of a dead witch into the body of a young child who's now killing older, you just start.
That movie sounds great.
I think I made that one up. I don't think that's a real one.
Let's do it. Make my life story.
But it's like they kind of like, you can kind of shut the story part off a little bit and just kind of experience them as what they are.
Yeah.
And this one is a little bit hamstrung by the cop plot, because and I've said this before, I do not like cop and inspector and detective plots in my horror movies, because they are almost always bad, because it's basically just, this is a really strange one though, because usually those plots are there for the purpose of exposition, moving the story along, and wasting time between big events.
But that's kind of what this plot feels like too.
I don't think it does any of those things.
Well, wasting time between big events.
Okay, maybe wasting time. But like I don't think you get too much. The exposition you get out of this is basically just the information about the doctor, and that's towards the end.
And that he went to college.
Yeah, and it's just like, it feels like even that stuff is kind of like trimmed down to the most minimal elements of that.
Yeah.
Because there's one part, I can't remember exactly what part it is, where the cop is talking to someone else, And based on absolutely no evidence that we have seen him gather himself,
Yeah.
he's like, I think that body got up and walked away. It's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
How did you come to that conclusion?
Yeah. Yeah. He's like, I think the dead are coming back. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What? Why? Why do you think that?
Yeah.
Any other hypotheses first with evidence?
And it's like
Yeah.
the cop plot in these movies are always just one guy, quote unquote, trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and the tough thing is when you make the cop the central character and you make that part of the plot kind of the main part of the plot, it is inviting the audience to try to put things together.
Yeah.
So then if you don't have a strong plot, like if you don't have a lot of logical steps between what's happening, then you've sort of invited your viewer to be asking those questions, but there are no answers, which then leaves you feeling unsatisfied. It makes the plot itself kind of meandering because it involves the cop just kind of being like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Maybe it's this wild guess.
Right.
And then nothing really feels like you've been invited to put this together like it's a puzzle, but you're not supposed to be putting it together like it's a puzzle. You're supposed to be just sort of sitting and basking in the atmosphere.
And the thing that makes these cop plots not work for me,
Cop plots.
is generally they come without a point of view for that character. And what I mean by that is their story is I need to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And that's usually where it ends. The one time,
Yeah.
maybe they've done it more than once, but obviously this is actually a really good movie to compare this to because they are very similar in certain respects. The one time that they did this and it worked really well is in The Wicker Man.
Yeah.
Because the cop, while he is trying to quote unquote figure out what's going on,
Yeah.
he has a very specific character and point of view that runs contrary to everybody else in the movie.
Yes.
And so he's not just there picking up clues. He's actually engaging with everything else that's going on and with the people who are there.
Yeah.
So him trying to do things in a more Christian and mainland England manner is a source of conflict and character in your story.
Right.
Whereas in this one, Dan's just trying to figure out what's going on. And if the only thing you can say about your character is he's trying to figure out what's going on, you got to take that back to the drawing board and figure it out better.
Right, because the thing that makes some cop plots work for me is the idea that they are an outsider to the community.
Right.
Coming in, and they do have that difference of ethics or difference of perspective or just different motivations than everyone around them. And because they're an outsider, there is that automatic tension of like, I'm trying to get something from you that you don't want to give to me. And we're coming at this problem from opposite viewpoints. And so there's tension, there's conflict. When it's like he's just the small town sheriff and this has all been going on right under his nose.
Yeah.
It's
that's
kind
what makes
of
it
like,
tough. Yeah.
okay, so you just have been oblivious this whole time.
Yeah, that's what makes it really tough is because it's like based on, again, I think there's so much you can do in this space that they just don't do. And I don't know if that's because this movie got brutally chopped to pieces, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But like another question I have is like, okay, if this guy is the sheriff of this town, and let's just say, for argument's sake, before he died, he was also the sheriff of the town.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
All of these other people in the town are dead.
Right.
And he's like, no one's been murdered here, and we've had 2 murders here in the past 7 days. This never happens here. Everybody else in the town is dead.
Right.
Young people are dead.
And
your wife is dead.
You can't say that. Like, maybe after a point, there were enough zombies to help Dobbs like cover up when he killed somebody and give him the time and the space to bring them back before anyone really noticed. But not only would it take time to build up to that point, but then it's like, yeah, some people are going to have gone missing. And then there's new people who this is a pretty small town.
Yeah.
And then Freddy the Gas Man just appears one day and everybody acts like, oh yeah, Freddy. He's always been here.
Yeah.
And it's like, how does he not notice that? There's one gas station in this town.
Right.
And all of a sudden a different guy runs it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, hi, who are you? Where did you come from?
And the lady who runs the diner, she's dead. When did she
Yeah.
die? How did she die? Is she new to town? I don't know. Nobody seems to know. Robert Englund, how did he die? I don't know.
And nobody in
the kid who works at the coroner's office, he's dead.
Yeah, and like none of them have families who've been like, hey, where did you go for 4 days?
Right.
Or like, hey, you've been acting really weird. Hey, honey, when we go to bed at night, you're really cold.
Yes.
And you don't move.
Yes.
Like,
Joe Bob did mention that. He's like, I don't know if they're not having sex with each other, but you would think you'd notice something was wrong.
seriously. So then it's like, all right, so then are you just wiping out whole families and bringing them back?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
and that's, again, it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, I mean, if you start doing this, you could do this all day with this movie, but
I think the cop plot kind of is part of the problem. Is that it asks you to do this kind of stuff.
yeah, I think there's a lot you could do with that plot,
Yeah.
but it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, there's no implication of like, oh, maybe he wasn't always the sheriff. Like, you know, they don't do that thing where the coroner's like, what happened? Tell me about your 3rd birthday. And he's like, I can't remember past last week. You know, like any of that kind of thing, you know? Or
Yeah. Like, do you remember coming back to your hometown from college and becoming the sheriff? What made you decide to do that? And being like, I don't know. I don't remember ever living somewhere else.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you know, I guess they just don't have the time for that in this, but I do think that stuff would be really beneficial because having this, I think you could have this play out where you have this character who is the sheriff of this small town who finds this stuff out and have it work. I think you could also potentially like say something with it too.
Yeah.
I don't know what you want to say is up to you.
Yeah, but there's several avenues you could use.
Sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is just it works as an ending, but when you stretch it out into the body of the movie, it is definitely the biggest weak spot in the film, I think.
Yeah. I was kind of wishing the whole time that the main character was like the assistant who works at the store in town who develops the film or something.
Right.
And who's like, wait, we've been getting a lot more film canisters lately. What's going on? Everybody's like amateur filmmakers now. Wait, what the hell is this?
I'm surprised that they didn't do something like when it turns out that he finds out that he is also a zombie or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that they didn't do something like he's Cobb's son or something, you know?
Yeah.
Because it is just, no, he also is dead. But it's, my question, like I said before, is like, why this guy? Why doesn't he remember? Why did he choose this person to not remember that he's dead or whatever? And I think there's story you could build in there where it's like, yeah, Cobb's son died and he didn't want to let go of him, so he rebuilt him and now he's, you know, that kind of stuff or something like that.
Yeah, or even you reminded me of a younger version of myself.
Sure.
You're so passionate about your work and I always enjoyed our conversations. I didn't want to lose that. So I tried to keep you in the dark about your new condition so that we could continue to have this sort of one-sided cat and mouse thing going on.
Yeah. I think there's a lot in there to play with.
But yeah, there's a lot more interesting and there are a lot of things that are more interesting and positive to say about this movie in terms of like the visuals and the atmosphere and the effects.
Right. One of those things is as you said, the effects, which I said are early Stan Winston. I think the effects are awesome.
Yeah.
That as you mentioned before, that first kill on the beach is I think that's one of the things that draws me into this so much is there's a certain comfortableness and familiarity. Comfortableness is a weird word to use. And familiarity, I think people can get watching these movies with the violence in them.
Yeah.
So like, let's say you're watching a Friday the 13th movie. Mm-hmm. There's a certain, you know that the violence is only going to look a certain way, right?
Yeah.
This is kind of hard to describe, but like, you know, okay, someone's going to get cut across the neck and it's going to look a certain way.
It's a level of it being predictable.
Yeah, not like visually predictable,
Yeah.
not like the actual, oh, that person's going to get killed this way. Just
Right,
like a visual shorthand where it's like, all right, I know because this is how these things work, they're not going to probably, half of their face isn't going to come off or something.
Right, or it'll be obscured in some way when they.
Yeah, and it's still a movie, so to a certain extent, the people who are getting killed or whatever are still looking good to a certain extent.
Yes.
I don't know if this is making sense, but basically, my point is the effects and the violence in this is very disturbing to me because it works outside of those expected methods and visuals of killing.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, the guy on the beach who gets killed, the way that he's tied up in that net
Yes.
was really freaking me out.
Yeah,
Like, 'cause
his
it's
nose
like,
is all smushed up.
Yeah, and his lip is kind of like up and weird.
Yeah, and
stuff.
he's been beaten pretty badly. So it's obvious he's like, because I think they break his legs or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Like, it's obvious he can't hold up his own body weight, and the net is kind of the only thing propping him up.
Yeah.
So his face is like really smashed into it. It makes him look like almost inhuman right away.
Yeah, and there's a certain, I think, innate thing in humans where the scarring or destruction of the human face, I think, can bother you more than some other things because it is the thing you're constantly looking at.
Yeah.
So when that gets all messed up, then it's kind of tough to deal with. And like that kind of continues through the movie up through the sequence where she puts the needle in the dude's eye.
Yeah.
Which is, as you said, there's something really uncanny valley about that. And
Yes.
the reason that is because that entire body was an animatronic puppet.
When you told me that, I was genuinely surprised by
Yeah.
it because I could tell, like, it didn't look quite right. Like, uncanny valley is the phrase I had used, and I stand by it because it didn't look quite right, but I didn't believe the whole thing was a puppet.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be like, oh, well, like, the body is his, but he's wearing a mask, or you know what I mean? Or the face underneath is like around the eye at first is really him, or the mouth. Like, I thought some part was actually a person. So that's crazy.
Yeah. And the fact that it is an animatronic makes that sort of jerky movement where he's like his eyes going around and he's trying to feels very unnerving because it is you're watching a quote unquote person moving in a way, but there's something off about it.
And I think the bandages covering him do a lot of the work and in covering it. Because he has been horribly burned. He's been horribly burned and disfigured. So the fact that his eye, all you see is one eye and then like his open mouth and it's just teeth, like he doesn't have any lips.
Yeah.
That feels believable because he's been immolated essentially. So you're like, yeah, of course around his eye looks weird. And of course like his teeth are just kind of out. He's been in this, like, he's been horribly assaulted in this way.
I did find that scene when the cop is talking to the doctor kind of funny though, because he's like, can I just talk to this guy for a minute? And the doctor's like, he's gonna be kind of hard to understand because he doesn't have any lips.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of, this is like slightly off topic, but did you watch the HBO Chernobyl?
No, I have not watched that yet.
Very dark, very, very good.
Apparently, they're working on the sequel right now in real time. So
Yeah,
that's fun.
seriously. But there's a scene where one of the main characters goes to one of the hospitals that's caring for guys who were in the reactor in the building when it melted down. And there's one guy, and you know how bad he must be. And you can hear him trying to talk, and you can mostly understand him, but it's painful. They never show him. They just show the main character's reaction to seeing him. Yeah. And it's really well done because it's not showing you everything.
Right.
And I think that's something in this movie that they kind of play with that. Like,
oh, totally, yeah.
Yeah, you get like the scene, there's the hitchhiker,
and
she gets her face bashed in by a rock. And then the Dobbs does the full reconstruction. And it's pretty graphic. Like it looks fairly realistic, at least to my eyes, when you first see her and half of her face is caved in and the other half is not. And then when he's doing this deconstruction, though, she's completely covered up to her shoulders.
Right.
So you only see you only see the part they really want you to focus on, and then the rest is kind of obscured, but it's also like not a good scene.
Yeah. Yeah, and that scene also as well is like, it's just, I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, it's really wild. And
Yeah,
I wonder how accurate it is to life.
I'm really curious to know that.
Yeah, like if somebody comes in with like really severe traumatic wounds to their body, is that type of full reconstruction possible?
I have no idea. And like that's one of the other things about this that kind of makes it so unnerving to me is like there's stuff going on with this obviously. So he's a coroner bringing people back from the dead. I know they don't actually do that unless they do. I'm not who's to say.
We don't know.
But like I was asking that question because it's a segment of life that I have
a segment of death
that I have no experience with, have never really asked any questions about. And I'm watching this going like, is this what they really do? This is really creepy and scary and weird.
Yeah. I mean, even if you're thinking like probably for the average person, they don't go that far, but you know that there's stuff they do to a body after someone has died that we don't know about.
Yeah.
You know, like there's a whole procedure that happens that we are totally ignorant of. And it's really weird to think about.
And there's so much of that stuff that like is just casually mentioned in life that you don't really stop to think about what it entails. Like anytime somebody dies under mysterious circumstances and like, oh, they did an autopsy. It's like, yeah, of course they did an autopsy. Do you know what that consists of?
Right. We watched the autopsy of Jane Doe.
Yeah. It's like they're cutting everything open.
Yeah.
And it's just like, your mileage may vary on how much that kind of creeps you out, but I have always been kind of squeamish and unnerved by that. Not like ethically or anything, but just the idea of it is, I think because it is such a, I don't know if taboo is the right word, but I'll use the word occult in the literal meaning of the word occult, which is obscured. Yeah. It's a very obscured segment of society that is pretty intense to a certain extent.
Well, I mean, people don't want to think about it. They don't want to think about it for their own sakes, and they don't want to think about it because most people have probably lost a loved one at some point in their lives, and if that person opted for burial rather than cremation, like, you don't want to think about that person going through that stuff, even though you know they are gone. It's still disturbing to think about, these processes being done to their body without their awareness or consent.
Yeah. It's intense.
Yeah. But that is one of the things that makes this movie, despite its weaknesses, a compelling watch at times, because it does, it brings a lot of this sort of stuff to the forefront of your mind without even having to be super explicit about it. Like, we're asking questions like, all right, they're dead and then they are brought back. Are they still themselves? Are they totally different people? It asks a lot of questions in those sorts of veins without actually having to sit down and ask them.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody's saying to each other like, but are they alive or are they dead?
Right.
They must be in a living death.
I'm really happy that they don't have those conversations.
Yeah.
That would really kill the mood of this movie. But the part of the mood of the movie is every single space in this movie seems to be filled with fog.
Yes.
Indoor, outdoor, daytime, nighttime. There's just like a layer of fog diffusing everything. Yeah. It's a very darkly shot movie. Yeah, it's very hazy. It's very darkly shot in a way that it's like not poorly lit, but it is dark in a way where the whole movie feels like you've just walked into a dimly lit bar, because you can never, I kind of feel like you can never really get a great look at anybody in this movie. There's always, it's kind of dark, it's hazy, they're always kind of obscured by like hats and stuff. Yep. Even during the daytime, it's capes and hats. But it's a really unique looking movie that, again, it has this sort of unnerving quality, creepy quality to it that I don't feel like you see in many movies.
This might be a little too on the nose, but one of the things I kept thinking about it was that everything's a little sepia toned.
Okay.
You know, like everything's a little hazy and sort of like desaturated color-wise.
Desaturated, yes.
You know, maybe not sepia is maybe not the right word, but like it has that old faded photograph feeling.
Yes,
is kind of
absolutely.
what I'm going for.
Yes, yeah.
Which I thought was again, that might just be me projecting, but
No, definitely.
yeah.
I would be curious to see, like, if someone made a movie like this now, whether or not people got very upset because it was, like, hard to see or something. Because I think it's part of the, for lack of a better word, charm of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that it does create this visual atmosphere that feels fairly unique.
Yeah, it's sort of like in the US, especially at least around us, you don't
Jeez,
really
don't get political. Come on.
I was just going to say that people aren't allowed to smoke
Sure.
indoors in like restaurants and bars anymore. But in plenty of other places in the world they really are. And it's that feeling of, you know, tons of people have been in here sort of smoking, not just tonight, not just last night, but for many nights.
Right.
And the windows stay closed and the door only opens when someone comes in or out. And you walk into a place like that and it just has this like permanent haze.
I think about that sometimes, how smoking used to be so pervasive.
Yeah.
And all I can think about is every single interior space must have smelled like a bowling alley.
Yeah.
But they probably didn't notice it because it was
Maybe a little
everybody
bit
was
less like
smelling.
feet. But
Yeah, maybe.
yeah, maybe.
It's just like, ugh. I mean, if you ever walk
Hey,
into
man,
a hotel room
yeah.
where they still allow you to smoke, and it's just like, ugh.
I mean, my dad smoked until I was like 11,
Yeah.
and it didn't bother me until after he quit,
Right.
and then I could smell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's probably a big part of it.
Yeah.
I may have told this story somewhere before. I don't remember. We were in Austin, Texas, doing this really fun walking tour. That was it was a walking tour through Austin that was telling the story of America's like first serial killer, who I guess operated in Austin.
Cool.
And so you've got it's a GPS app guided thing through your phone, right?
That's awesome.
And so you're listening to this story, and it can tell where you are based on your GPS positioning. And there's a section where it's like, all right, now cross the street, walk down those stairs, down to where the river's running through. And it's like you walk down, and we walk down, and it's like, oh my God. It just smelled like raw sewage.
Whoa.
And then the voice comes on the headphones and goes, take a big whiff. You smell that? That's what the entire street smelled like in the 1800s. And it's like, oh.
So they brought you down there specifically for the smell.
Yeah, specifically so you knew what the
Nice.
1800s smelled like,
Yes.
which apparently was fresh shit.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, but there is that sort of haze over everything in this
Yeah.
movie that is well used.
I think so.
Yeah.
So the ending. We talked
Yes.
a bit about the ending in general, about the twist that everybody's dead, he's also dead. I would like to talk specifically about the sequence with his wife, because that's my favorite part of the ending.
Yeah.
Not the other stuff, because it's so creepy. Because she shows up and she's kind of like acting like a bit of like a Stepford wife to him.
Yes.
Like,
Well,
what do you want for dinner? Well,
She's repeating a conversation they had earlier in the movie.
oh, is that what it is?
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't even pick that
that's
up.
why I keep joking about you can have fish sticks or beef stroganoff,
that
because she
tracks.
says it at least twice, if not 3 times in the movie.
And Dan is freaking out. So he shoots her like 3 or 4 times. And
Yeah.
the first couple times she doesn't really react. And then she kind of has a minute where after like the 4th shot, it dawns on her that she's dead.
Yeah,
it's
she's like
the
crying.
The veil comes down and she goes, I'm dead. You need to bury me.
Yeah.
And has like a breakdown and runs away.
Yeah.
And he goes off after her. She's run into the cemetery, has carved her own name into one of the gravestones, the gravestone of the guy from the beginning who they had to disinter, is that the right word?
Exhume.
Exhume?
Disinter works too.
Who they had to exhume. So there's an empty grave. She's carved her own name into his gravestone. So
Yes.
it says, here lies Janet now.
Yeah.
And
Instead of like George Lemoyne,
Lemoyne, yeah.
itinerant.
Yes. And she is now in the bottom of this grave,
Yeah.
dragging dirt over herself. When Dan comes over and she's like, you need to bury me. I'm dead. Please bury me. And I
Yeah.
was like, this is so fucking disturbing to me.
Yeah, she's literally begging to be buried. Like she's literally begging him to let it end, to help her end it.
And then all of the other townspeople show up, and they have this like weird dead people funeral, kind of.
Yeah, they bring her like flowers. Like they're all like prepared for it, which
Right,
is kind
yes,
of weird.
yeah.
They all show up with like bouquets and like gifts and shit to put on the new grave, and just be like, well, yep, she was great. We're real sorry, Dan. Bye.
Yeah.
But it's not really bye. Like they all kind of try to surround him, but it doesn't even feel violent.
Right.
And I think in the moment you're maybe supposed to think it's gonna get violent, but like they don't need to get violent with him. He's already one of them.
Right. Right.
So it's almost like in a weird way, their community coming together in this really bizarre way.
Yeah, and it's another one of those things where it's like this.
When she pulls gets the dirt over her face is like the last thing to be covered.
It's kind of an approach to this kind of thing that I've never really seen before, that creeps me out, and it's not so much just like jump scary as much as like internally creepy and scary to me.
Yeah, there's like an existential aspect to it, because then you're asking like, okay, she's dead, but she's self-aware.
Right.
So is she just gonna lie there and feel herself rot?
Right.
Over time, like what happens to her now, or does she just shut off after a bit? Like
it reminds me a bit of is it Tales from the Crypt? I think it's Vault of Horror. So in the 70s, sure.
Why not?
The British film company called Amicus did 2 movies based on the EC Comics Tales from the Crypt and Vault of Horror.
Yeah.
And they were both anthology movies with multiple stories. One of the stories was basically like a monkey's paw situation. Sure. And basically the punchline at the end of it is one of the there's a husband and wife. The husband ends up dying or something. Yeah. And the wife says, I just really wish he was back. I wish he was alive. And there's this really cool, creepy ass sequence where I hope I'm remembering this correctly, where the hearse rolls up to the front of their house, and these really creepy, like ghoulish looking pallbearers silently bring his casket into the house. Oh. And then all of a sudden he just starts screaming from the inside of the thing. Wow. Because he's alive and he's filled with embalming fluid.
Oh my God.
So monkey's paw. You didn't say how you wanted him alive.
Right.
But it kind of reminds me, and there's another movie actually by Bob Clark, director of Black Christmas. Oh. Called Death Dream. Oh. Which is a very cool low budget horror movie that is sort of an expansion of this same monkey's paw story, where it's about a mother who prays for the return of her son from Vietnam, but her son has been killed in Vietnam. Oh. So he comes home, but he is basically a zombie. Yeah. And it ends in a similar way to this, where he is like falling apart because he's a rotting corpse who's walking around, and he ends up like trying to bury himself. It's a really arresting image of a reanimated corpse who knows that they're dead, who is trying to bury themselves again. Yeah,
well, it's like you can't continue to exist physically in this way, but your mind can't handle the horror of knowing.
You've recognized that you yourself are an abomination.
Right, right.
So this actually was a video nasty briefly.
Yeah.
Between 1983 and 1985, this was on the English video nasties list until I guess somebody was like, it's not really that bad.
That seems to be how most of them got off.
Yeah. It was originally financed by Guinness, the beer company.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It was financed by Guinness, but then Guinness sold the rights to it, then it sold it again, and then it was the fourth company that had the rights to it recut it quite a bit, so the original director's cut does not exist.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yeah. And the final version is basically a hybrid of what 4 different companies thought it should look like. Ooh. Which kind of makes sense given how kind of weird and choppy it is. Yeah. And it's unfortunate that we can't see. It's one of those weird things, though, where it's like, would it help it, really?
Right, or would it maybe just feel more mundane?
Yeah.
Or
I guess there's a lot of there was a lot of like gore stuff cut out, so maybe that would go a certain distance. But like, I don't know if more Dan is gonna make the movie any better.
Yeah, and even with the gore stuff, like, I don't think this movie needs much more gore.
Right.
Like, it's got some pretty good. If that's what you're looking for, this has got a couple good moments.
Not a lot of blood.
Right.
But it's.
If you want to see a woman jab a very big needle into somebody's eye.
Who doesn't? Also why it feels Italian. They like to do that.
Yes.
In Italian movies.
The needles. Ugh. But yeah, I don't know if this would even benefit from extra gore.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it is one of those. So my last question kind of runs into that same idea, which is like, I was thinking this movie feels like it would be kind of ripe for a remake.
I was thinking that the whole time we were watching it.
However,
yeah,
I do worry or wonder if this is one of those movies where it's like, if you try to make more sense of it, you're just going to lose some of that charm. Like, I can see doing this again and telling a story that, quote unquote, makes sense. But like, is that really going to improve this? Because I think what I respond to more than anything is the sort of like dreamlike, abstract kind of nature of this.
Yeah.
And I wonder if trying to really kind of like, all right, let's really pin down what's going on with Dan is going to help the movie, you know? Or help a new version of it anyway.
Yeah, and I think I agree. I think if there was ever a remake of this, I wouldn't necessarily want it to be more plotty.
Sure.
Like, I think I would like it to be a little clearer where it is going to be plot driven.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, yeah.
Kind of clarify things, maybe simplify things a little bit. Like, just make it a little bit more like when this is a scene where we're going to be being a sheriff, we'll just be a sheriff. But I do think like it would be interesting to see a modern take on this in terms of like some of the themes of like the sort of like photography and the taking videos and like capturing images. I think could be really interesting. And like, I don't know. I think it would be interesting to see an update of this.
Yeah.
I would actually want it to stay fairly true to what it is now.
Yeah.
But I think even like having a more modern dynamic between Dan and Janet.
Sure.
You know,
right.
like making her a little bit more of a character and less of a Stepford wife who also teaches voodoo to her class.
Yeah, she's such a weird character because like
she seems like she's supposed to have personality.
Right. And she doesn't like she only becomes kind of Stepford wifey at the end when she comes in, shows up at the coroner's place. Before that, she's living her own life. They're kind of implying that she might be having, well, the implication that the inference that Dan is taking is that she might be having an affair or something with the camera guy from the beginning. Clearly that's not the case. There's again, even there though, there's like the film that Dan sees of his wife sleeping with someone.
Yeah.
He takes to mean, oh, she's cheating on me.
Yeah, it's weird that he doesn't recognize himself.
Well, he doesn't see himself.
Yeah.
He only sees the back of his head until he
I recognized that it was him.
Oh, did you really?
Right away.
I didn't even notice. But like even that video, even that film, what is that house? It's like some
Is it the house
is it
that
the
they
same house?
chase the family into?
The abandoned house? Like why is his
Well, that is actually one thing I meant to say just briefly when we were talking earlier about like the visuals and the aesthetics is one of the things I enjoy about this movie is that everything is falling apart.
Yes, yeah.
Like nothing is new, nothing is modern.
Just like the people.
Just like the people. Like everything, because they're all dead. So they don't care if the shop gets dusty and cobwebby and whatever. Like it doesn't matter to them because they're dead. They don't care anymore. So like it's like the town is dying around them.
Yeah, which is really cool. It has it's kind of like a Fall of the House of Usher kind of feel.
Yeah, and I feel like you notice it, or at least I noticed it more and more as the movie progressed.
Yeah.
Where I was like, why are all the houses here like kind of dusty and weird? Why is the guy where he's bringing it to like the counter to get the film developed? Like, why are the shelves all like half bare and disheveled and covered in cobwebs? Like, what is going on here?
It's a great visual storytelling element.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway.
It reminds me a bit of, I just watched have you ever seen My Bloody Valentine? The original one?
No, but you were talking about it the other day.
Yeah, it's one I wish we'll do that one eventually.
Yeah.
But I just watched the remake, which not good.
Is that the one with is that the one with David Boreanaz, the remake?
No, that's Valentine.
Valentine.
Yes.
Okay, separate movie.
Separate movie.
Got it.
Different movie. Worth an entire conversation on its own.
Oh boy.
No, it's they remade it about 10 years ago. The gimmick was that it was one of the big 3D movies that came out.
Jesus.
It looks like it's shot on a phone. It's like it's got that weird like straight to video. I can't describe the look of it, but there's a certain look that video has, especially video from 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That makes everything kind of feel like a porno to a certain extent. But like they took the story of My Bloody Valentine, which is a fairly straightforward slasher sort of like urban legend slasher kind of story.
Yeah.
And they added in this whole subplot about like the town dying because the mine jobs are leaving. The killer is mine. He's a mine-based killer in the original one and the new one. But it's like they're trying to add all this extra like story weight to it.
Yeah.
And it's just not interesting.
Yeah, you just like don't need it for what it is.
Yeah. Whereas in this movie, all of that stuff is so baked into the look and subtextual that it's just really adds to the whole thing, where it's like they're not directly talking about the fact that this entire town looks like garbage,
right?
But it kind of it's constantly there,
yes, and
it subconsciously or not affects, kind of like adds to the whole atmosphere.
Yeah, and even like the costuming and the music that Dobbs listens to, like the way Dobbs dresses and the music he listens to, but then also like the woman who runs the diner, George Lemoyne / Freddie, once he becomes the gas station attendant, like even the clothes they're wearing feel very 1950s.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's this interesting, like it's almost trapped in time, but also falling apart.
Yeah, yeah. So, what do you think? Should this be on our list? It is not currently on the list. Would you put this on the list?
You know, I think I would keep it off, but I think it would be close.
Yeah.
You know, like it's got some interesting stuff. It's got some things that feel very like they are worth looking closer at, but I don't think it quite makes it.
Yeah, probably not. There are so many movies on this list that I would take off that it's like, all right, if this is on the list, then fucking Dead and Buried should be on this list. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one for me. Okay, so I know I used this comparison the last time.
Yes.
When we were doing, what the hell did we just do in February? We did a Stephen King movie called
Silver Bullet.
Silver Bullet. I think I'm thinking of Frailty. Anyway,
I think you're thinking of Frailty.
I said, if you're gonna have, if I can do a switch with this and Phantasm, I would do it immediately, because let me expand on that. The feeling I get from this movie.
I thought you were just gonna say because I hate Phantasm.
Well, yes, that's
goodbye, folks.
Understood at this point. The feeling I get from this movie is the feeling I feel like I should be getting from Phantasm, because Phantasm has kind of dabbles in the same arena of like funeral homes and tiny aliens.
Well, people dying and their bodies being interfered with.
Right.
Yeah.
But like Phantasm has sort of a dreamlike.
Yes.
They call it a dreamlike structure, but I think it's just a bad structure.
Right. I think that's a retcon right there.
Yeah. But like it never really landed with me that way.
Yeah.
But this movie I feel like does land with me that way, where it kind of creeps me out in a sort of a way that's different than just like scaring me.
Yeah.
It has that sort of dreamlike atmosphere that I love. Yeah, I mean, I would switch it with Phantasm.
That's fair.
But I don't think I would say like this needs to be on the list. Let's get rid of number 200 and drop this in there.
Sure. Yeah, I can agree with that assessment.
Cool. I think that's going to do it for our coverage of Dead and Buried. I hit the randomizer button. Beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, beep, boop. And next up, we will be doing we're doing 166. We're doing number 166, which it's interesting that we're doing this now because I went through and looked because it seemed like we had done that number already. We haven't, but some of the movies we have already done did briefly sit at that number, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So, for instance,
I can't even keep track anymore.
Yeah, so like there was one that was like 168 and then shifted to 166. Basically, my point is if we had hit that number a while ago, we would have had to do a different one. Anyway, long story short, we're doing Dead Ringers, David Cronenberg.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Which will be a really interesting one to do because talk about not flashy but unnerving.
Yeah.
Dead Ringers is a good one.
All right.
Have you seen Dead Ringers?
Oh, yes, a long time ago.
Yeah. I haven't watched it in probably 10 years.
I would say it's probably like 15 for me.
Yeah, I would say it's so weird. I actually have a frame of reference of how long that actually is because we've been in this house since 2013.
Wow.
I was like, I definitely haven't watched Dead Ringers since I moved here. So.
That makes it easy.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to do Dead Ringers next time.
Cool.
Thank you guys for listening. If you want to support the show, you can go to patreon.com/thepenskyfile. Sign up for our Patreon where you can join Amanda and myself as we watch the junior varsity Stephen King adaptations this year.
The second stringers,
The second
if you
string.
will.
I keep forgetting what the friggin' I keep wanting to say B team, second string.
B
That's
team
it.
works too. Yeah.
January we did It Chapter 2. February is Silver Bullet. March is we decide. What was the next one we were going to do?
Was it Salem's Lot?
Salem's Lot.
Yes.
Thank you. That would have been bad if I couldn't remember what we were going to do when we had to do it. March is Salem's Lot, and then it's going to kind of be random off of there. But you can also listen to our entire last year coverage of the Friday the 13th series, which was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, you can listen to me slowly go insane.
Yeah, yes, she really wants to tap out around part 9, but there's so many more to do. But thank you guys for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Clyde.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.